Clerk apologized and offered to fix the chainsaw at no cost. Checked the motor, checked the chain, the fuel intake. Seeing no obvious issues, the clerk then pulled the cord and the chainsaw started right up. The customer jumped back surprised and said, "I didn't know it could do that." Give you a minute. Some of you take a little while to learn that. So now, why do I tell you that? I have been the privilege of being part of church my entire life. I grew up going to church. It's been a huge part of who I am. For the past 11 years, I've gotten to serve in a full-time ministry capacity. The last 8 of those pastoring here in Yankton and planting this church. When it comes to church, when it comes to faith, when it comes to how we see Jesus in this country, I could describe it as I think a lot of people are trying to cut down a tree with a chainsaw that's turned off. And I think that there's a lot of work and a lot of power going into it. And I just wonder if we really understood the church, if we understood how it was properly designed to be used, how quickly our lives would change, how quickly our marriages, our church, our community, our country, and our world would be different. So if you're a guest, we have been in a series called Lock the Door, and we're talking about temptation. We're going to restart that next week and continue through the month of September, really talking about that. But today, I just wanted to take some time as a church family to talk about what church could be. Specifically, what our church could be. One of my roles as your pastor is to really keep my finger on the pulse of God's kingdom, not only in our community of Yankton, but in our nation and our world. And what I can tell you is that God is moving right now in a major way, in a way that I haven't seen in my entire lifetime. And one of the situations I'll share that is back in February of 2023, there's a small Christian college called Asbury University. And if you didn't hear about this, there was a mandatory chapel. Now, if you've been part of any Christian school, they talk about a mandatory chapel, right? That happened one day. And there's about 1,000 students in this chapel. And the pastor got up and gave a mandatory message. And he said it wasn't really that great of a message. And in fact, I had a chance to listen to this guy share this. And he said a lot of the college students had their hoodies on and their AirPods in. But something happened, and after the service was over, 19 of those 1,000 students came forward, and they all stayed in that chapel for the next 16 days. And they were joined by not only their entire campus, but literally thousands of young people came to Asbury University. And there were sins that were confessed. There was hearts being turned to Jesus. And the best part is, after 16 days, it didn't really end. It got sent out. And this spread all over. And movement has been happening since then with several young people. It actually, in the country of England right now, is seeing a revival that they haven't seen since the 19th century. New York City is experiencing a great awakening that's happened. And specifically, there's a church called Saddleback Church out in California. Pastor Rick Warren was part of that church. Elaine and I have been out there several times on our own, and it's a lot of the basis of what we do at Celebrate was really kind of modeled after Saddleback. There has been a similar type of event that happened at Saddleback, where there's people coming to Christ in just amazing ways. I tell you all that to say, God is moving right now in a way I've never seen in my lifetime. And I don't know about you, but I hunger for that here in our town. And for the last year and a half as a church, we've been on a journey. It's been one of the biggest steps of faith we've taken as a church. And God has provided all the way through. And I want to just take some time today just to talk about some things. I know there's been maybe some confusion, and just to kind of clarify, we talked about Janet's Kids that we're going to be doing. We have our construction, our party plaza, our laser tag. And what I really want to do is I want to help clarify some things for you. I want to show you what God's doing, but where I think he's going to go. And I could sum it up to you very simply by saying, planning a church is not complicated. I've been part of this church plant here in Yankton. I also had a year over in Lake Andes as well. We have our campground church that's been going great. I've had a front row seat to several other church plants as I've been growing. Church planting isn't complicated. All you got to do is show up. Okay, that's the first step. So congratulations, you guys did that, right? You build a kind of a group of people, and you start getting a budget, and then you get a little building, and you kind of, what happens is there's a natural tendency to get comfortable. There's a natural tendency to kind of turn inwardly and really start protecting what we have. The problem is I really can't find any of that in the Bible. That's not what God intended the church to be. I think what we have is an American creation of what church can be. If I could put it this way, I think the chainsaw is turned off. I wonder what would happen if we would turn that chainsaw on and move the way that God wants us to be. I said planning a church isn't complicated. But what I want to do is I want to build a community. See, building a community is harder. There's no end date when you're building a community. We can't really get comfortable when we're building a community. A community causes us to stay laser focused on our mission. The name of our church is Celebrate Community Church. And many of you know we planted from Sioux Falls. And not one person, when we moved from Sioux Falls, said, you have to name the church that. I made the decision to call the church Celebrate Community Church because I want to build a community. I never want that focus to stay off of that. That's why that's our church name, Celebrate Community Church. For those of you who don't know, or maybe you're new to church, we are a Wesleyan church. Now, we don't advertise that a lot because I could say Wesleyan, and I might as well say blah, 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 because you don't know what that means. and that's the way with so many denominations. And if I could summarize for you, every denomination, Baptist, Catholic, Methodist, Lutheran, Presbyterian, I could go on and on and on. I could sum up all denominations in 3 ways. How they read God's word, how they do baptism, and how they do communion. Okay? Those are the 3 reasons why there's all these different denominations. And why do I say that? Isn't it interesting? Those are the things that are supposed to unite us as followers of Jesus Christ. Reading God's word, baptism, and communion, yet it's caused all these divisions. So that's why we say we're Celebrate Community Church. This is what it means to build a community. And so to help us start this, I want to have a conversation with 3 questions. And I'm going to ask you these questions. I've asked some people in our church some of these questions already to kind of give some answers while you're thinking about it. But here's the first question I want to ask you today. How would you describe our church? What would you say if somebody said, hey, how do we describe Celebrate Church? Here's some answers that I heard from people I've asked. It's welcoming. It's got amazing people. We've got a cool building. It felt like home. It was loving. Come as you are. It saved my life. It's open-minded, close-knit, uplifting, non-judgmental. That's how people describe our church. The second question I asked is, how would you describe Jesus? Here's what was said. He's been with me through my worst. He's saved me from so much. He's very real to me. I go to him for everything. He's patient with me as I learn. I'm early on in my journey. I go closer to him each day. Sometimes I don't like when he says no. I like that one. That was good. The third question I asked, and I would ask you today, how would you describe me, Pastor Jeff? That's a dangerous question to ask somebody, by the way. Here's what I heard. He was the first one to greet me. He's great at preaching. He's very real. He's honest. He's not perfect. I like that one too. He admits he's still learning too. Here's probably my favorite. He's a big kid. Not wrong. Easy to talk to. I said this out at the campground. I told him I add this one. Somebody at the campground said to me, you're the Energizer Bunny. I like that one too. Incredibly handsome. No, I just made that one up. Okay, nobody said that. Why do I ask you those 3 questions? Why are those important questions for us to ask as we go? The number one way a church grows is not through signs. It's not through social media. It's not through banners. The number one way a church grows is through people. When was the last time you saw a great movie and told no one about it? The first thing we do when we see a great movie is we tell people about it. How many of you have gone to a restaurant before you went and you read the Yelp review before you went to the restaurant, okay? We share with people about that. We go to Amazon and buy stuff and we make sure it's 5 stars or we see what's happening, right? The first thing you do is you share it with people. And that's why I say, which is a weird thing for a pastor to say, stop inviting people to church. You're like, that's weird. No, I want you to still come on Sunday. Don't get me wrong. Don't hear that wrong. But are we inviting people to church? Or are we telling them about our church? Are we sharing with them what Jesus has done in our life and how he can do the same thing? In Mark chapter 1, there's a story of a time that Jesus healed a man with leprosy. Now, again, if you're part of Connected Celebrate, you should have got a link with that verse as well. Otherwise, we have YouVersion. It's a free app on any smartphone. You can download it right now. But Jesus did something interesting. He healed this guy and he said, now make sure you don't tell anybody about this. But look at what Mark writes in verse 45. Instead, he went out and began to talk freely, spreading the news. As a result, Jesus could no longer enter a town openly, but stayed outside in lonely places. Yet the people still came to him from everywhere. Did you catch that, church? This guy's life was changed by Jesus, and he couldn't shut up about it. He told everybody about Jesus. So much so that Jesus had to go away from people, and they still came and found him. Does that describe your relationship with Jesus? Does that mean what it means to go to church? Do we see that happening? See, when it comes to building a community, the first step is we need to share it. Just as this guy did, just as the passion he had. Stop inviting people with church. Start sharing about your church. Start sharing about your relationship with Jesus. And one of the things that I offer to people is if you're having conversations with people and inviting them to come to church, I would love to meet with them. Maybe you and I and them can sit down and have coffee or come together and talk about that and just sometimes lower those barriers. Sometimes people have these ideas of what church is, and just maybe sometimes sitting down and having a conversation can help lower those boundaries. So to build a community means we need to start sharing about that. But there's another step in building a community. If you go to John chapter 13, if you're not familiar with the Bible, this is the night that Jesus was betrayed. This is his final moments with his disciples right before he would be betrayed and killed and eventually resurrected. And look at what John, the disciple who was in the room that night, look at verse 3, what John says. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. Did you catch that, church? Jesus had all power and all authority. Jesus could have done whatever he wanted to do at that point, to which I'd ask you, if you had all power and authority, what would you do with it? How would you use it? Here's what Jesus did. Look at verse 4. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Jesus, the master and the servant, took this role of a servant, put himself in the place where he got down and washed the disciples' feet. And then Jesus said to the disciples, if I'm your master and Lord and I wash your feet, now you should go and do likewise. Friends, if we want to be like Jesus, if we want to build a community, we need to serve. That's what Jesus told us to do. No matter your position, we need to serve. It's not about me. At Celebrate, we say it this way. This is our Celebrate Life journey. Help me out if you know this. It starts with me, it moves to we, and it's all about he. Help me out, church. Starts with me, moves to we, all about he. That's the step that says it's not about me. Moving to we is serving, a way that you can contribute to God's kingdom. How can you help us continue to serve God the way that Jesus did as well? You know, one of my favorite movies of all time is the movie Karate Kid. You guys remember Karate Kid? Okay, younger generation, this is the Cobra Kai prequel, just so you know, okay? So if you're not familiar or you forgot about this, Karate Kid is the story of a young man named Daniel who is getting bullied. And he meets this guy who knows karate. And he says, you're going to teach me karate. And he's great. He said, okay, show up at my house tomorrow and I'll teach you karate. And Daniel's all excited. He shows up at this guy's house. And what does the guy have him do? Remember? Wax on, wax off, right? He's got all these cars. He says, okay, I want you to wax all these cars, but do it a certain way. Not just wax on, wax off, right? Daniel's a little confused, but he does it, works hard all day. Comes back the next day. Okay, I want to learn karate. What did he say? Sand the deck. Okay, you're going to sand the deck. Day 2. Day 3 shows up. Paint the house, but do it this way. Paint the fence. So by day 4, Daniel's pretty frustrated. He goes out. He says, listen, I came to learn karate, and you're treating me like a slave. You're having me do all this stuff. And what does Mr. Miyagi teach Daniel at that point? All that for. You've been learning karate the whole time. You didn't even know it. You've been doing all this work, and all these things are motions that happens so you can learn how to do karate. But watch this, and this is the point that I think sometimes gets missed. Mr. Miyagi taught Daniel, there's a certain way to do karate right. Because, watch this, if you learn karate and you learn it wrong, it becomes a weapon that can hurt people. When you learn karate, you can do it right and learn it the right way, or you can learn it the wrong way and it can become a weapon. Can I say something? Been in church my entire life. Church can be used as a weapon. And I talk to people all the time who tell me stories of what happened to them as a result of church. And I always say the same thing. Listen, if that were my experience, I would totally understand where you're coming from. And I'm so sorry that happened to you, but that's not church. That's somebody who used church in a negative way that has impacted you. Friends, when we serve here at Celebrate, there's a certain way that we do things. And the reason why is because if we do church wrong, church can become a weapon that hurts people instead of the greatest love that they can possibly have. Now, what I'm telling you, it's not saying this is the only way to do church. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that other churches are doing wrong. What I'm saying is, here at Celebrate, here's how we do it. And the shorthand I want to use for that is wax on, wax off, right? There's certain ways that we do things. As your pastor, I want to teach you some certain ways on how we serve. There's certain things that we do. Does that mean Jeff's micromanaging? Absolutely not. The opposite of that. It's because I've seen church done wrong. And I've seen church hurt people, and we want to do everything we can to show you the right way of how we feel God's called us to do this and be a blessing, not a burden. You know, one of the biggest myths that I hear sometimes is Jeff's doing this all by himself. First of all, thank you. You have a pretty high opinion of me if you think I could do. There's no way I could do all this myself. We've got a wonderful group of people here who understand what it means to wax on, wax off, to serve and give of their gifts and their time to help us to reach people. And I want to say this too. Like, I talk to a lot of nonprofit leaders, even in our community, and their boards are filled with people who love the authority and the title. They just don't want to have the responsibility that goes with it. Can I tell you something? Here in this church, we're following Jesus Christ. If you want to have leadership and authority in this church, wax on, wax off. Go pick up a towel and serve. Show up at 9:30 in the morning and make sure the floors are vacuumed and the bathrooms are clean. Well, that doesn't sound like leadership to me. Actually, that sounds exactly what leadership is. That's exactly what Jesus taught, wasn't it? And please don't use that as, well, I have to clean the bathrooms. That's not what I said. We all have gifts. We all have the ability to serve in certain ways. What is the way that you can do it? Let's talk about that. If you're here right now, or you're new, or you'd like to get involved in serving, let me know. There's certain ways that we can do that and help you with that and learn how to do church right. When we're building a community church, we need to share it with people. We want to help them understand who Jesus is, who our church is. We need to serve. This is what Jesus called us to do. Wax on, wax off, or Celebrate Life Journey. But there's one more step to building a community. And this one's the hardest one. I think it's the most important one. That's why I saved it for last. The number one issue facing our church, it's not financial, it's not construction, it's not time we have. The number one issue facing our church is the same number one concern that Jesus had for his church. And in John 17, as Jesus knew it was his last time there, he prayed for his disciples. And he prayed for one specific thing because he knew this was the only thing that can harm his kingdom. When you build a church on love and forgiveness and grace and never giving up, this one thing can completely undermine that whole thing. This is Jesus' prayer, John 17, verse 21. My prayer is not only for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. The number one issue facing our church is not financial, it's not construction, it's not even time, it's unity. That's what Jesus prayed for, that we would all be one, just as the Father and him are one. Now, I want to clarify, unity does not mean uniformity, okay? We're all different. We're one body, but we all have many members. Thank God we're not all the same. Amen? Okay? Unity, what unity means is we're all going the same way. Unity means it's not about me, it's all about he, and we're going to join together with all of our gifts and talents and serve the way God called us to be. But this is the other thing about unity that's so important. Unity does not happen by accident. We have to work at it. If I say it this way, we have to solve for unity. Unity is a problem sometimes that we have to solve for. One of my great joys is walking with couples through premarital counseling before they're going to get married. And I always say the same thing. Right now it's all sunshine and rainbows and you love this person and we're great with that. But I'm telling you, at some point, there's going to come a point where it's not that way anymore. There's going to come a point where you don't see eye to eye anymore. And that's the time when unity really happens. Church, it's the same thing that happens in a church. Unity is a continual journey we have to work for and be part of. There is an enemy who wants to divide us and kill us and destroy. We need to solve for unity. So I'm going to give you something really, really practical. It's a statement that I want to become one of our core values as a church and as celebrators. If you say I'm a celebrator, Celebrate Community Church is my church, this is one thing that's super, super core to what we believe. Positives go all around. So if something good happens, share that. Think of the guy with leprosy. He got healed. He couldn't shut up about it. Share that all over. Positives go all around. But the second part of that is just important. Problems go up. If you have a situation that happens and a problem comes up, come directly to me. Text me, call me. I don't care how small or minor you think it is, problems go up. Positives go all around. Because watch this, if we get that order wrong, see what that does to unity? When problems go all around and all I hear is positive stuff, that doesn't work, does it? That's how unity gets broken. See, whenever there's a problem, and there will be problems at your job, in your marriage, in your church, with your pastor, if there is a problem, there's really 3 outcomes to any problem. Here's the first one. You know the answer. My job as your pastor is to equip and empower you so you can know the answers to questions when they come up. That's one of my goals for today, is that we cast vision and clarify some things so you know when something comes up. And by the way, if you encounter a problem that comes up and you know the answer, I'd still love to hear about it. Because it's nice for me to know those things sometimes, right? This could be, just so you know I had this conversation, this could come up. Make sense? So you know the answer. The second outcome that can come with a problem is you don't know the answer. Okay? Communication is a two-way street. I believe that when I talk, things make sense. That's not always the case, all right? I really try hard. I work hard at it. But listen, I don't know what you don't know. If there's something you don't know, that's my fault. Please ask the question. And I had a great example of this. When we had our Riverboat Days event for the parade, we had a bunch of people over here at Party Plaza. We had our giveaway. We had a team member that somebody asked them a question they didn't know the answer to. The question was, when is the laser tag arena open? That's a great question. And this person didn't know the answer to that. Maybe some of you don't know the answer to that. But this person did the exact right thing. Let's go talk to Jeff. She brought this person over to me. Hey, this is this person. They had a question. I didn't know the answer to it. Great. I gave them the answer. Here's the answer. We don't have hours for laser tag. Okay? Now, people can go online and request a time to use the laser tag, and then we reach out to them and set up the time, and more often than not, it works. Make sense? Now I'm equipping you guys to know the answer for that, right? So when a problem comes up, you might know the answer. You might not know the answer, but here's the third thing that can come up. And this is where true unity happens. You might not agree with the answer. Okay? Can we say it this way? We don't always need to see eye to eye, but we do need to walk hand in hand. Everything we do here, there's a reason for and a process for why we do it. That's the wax on, wax off. I'm going to admit this again. It's not perfect because we're all people and we're still learning. But I want you to understand, even if you don't agree, let's talk about it. I want to give you, I've had the privilege of working for some amazing supervisors. There's some people in my life that have worked jobs, and specifically, I worked a part-time job, and I had a supervisor. He was just a really great supervisor, really supportive, really did his job well. It was awesome. And one of the things that I had at this job where I would train new people when they would come on, and I had a new employee come on, and I was training this new employee, and there was a problem, right? Because it happens at jobs. There's a problem. So the new employee and my supervisor, and there was a gap. And I could see it, but neither one of them could. You with me on this? So I did something really radical, something like might blow your mind, okay? This is what I did. I sat down with my supervisor and this new employee, and we had a conversation. And I said, hey, this sounds radical, doesn't it, right? Just the three of us sat down, and I said, hey, here's what I see from my perspective. And the new employee shared from their perspective. And then my supervisor shared from their perspective. You with me on this? Do you see how unity doesn't just happen? Do you see how we have to fight for it? We have to solve for this and unify that? And in that conversation, guess who made the decision? It was my supervisor. It wasn't the new employee or me. It's his job. He makes that decision. Watch this. You know what I didn't do? I didn't walk out of that meeting and turn to the new employee and go, man, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't know. Right? Because what would that do? That would completely undermine unity. Friends, listen, this is not difficult, but it's hard, right? We have to solve for unity. Listen, if you don't know the answer, let me know. If we don't agree, that's okay. We don't have to agree, but we still need to walk hand in hand. When we build a community, it involves, listen, share. Stop inviting people to church. Start sharing your faith. Start sharing about your church with other people. Serve. That's what it means to be like Jesus, is to serve. Wax on, wax off. If you don't know where you fit in that, let me know. We'd love to have a conversation. And solve. We have to solve for unity. Positives go all around. Problems go up. So now, what I'd like to do for you, because I love you, is I want to equip you. I'm going to share some things about our church right now, so now you can be enlisted in our community. Even if it's your first time here today, you're going to know some things about our church and be enlisted in our community. And there's a couple areas we're going to talk about. The first one is we're going to talk about attendance. Okay? Question I get a lot of times, people say, how big's your church? Hey, how do we answer that question? That's a great question. Now, when we talk about attendance, most people are talking about right now. How many people are in this room right now? And we count that. We count attendance because it's important. Jesus did that. You remember when it said Jesus fed 5,000 people? And then later on it said he fed 4,000 people? You know how they knew that? Because they counted. That's important. Here's the problem. When it comes to church attendance, we tend to measure the effectiveness of a church by the attendance. And I don't think that's true. I don't think that's what we should do. Listen, the number is not the people that come on Sunday morning. We're talking about community. Community is not attendance. Community is people. People are what matters in a community. And so this is how we talk about people. This is the language we use when we're talking about people. There's 3 groups of people we talk about. The first one we call our legacy group. And what I mean by legacy group is these are people who have moved on. What that means is people who have moved on from Yankton. Maybe they, felt the calling to move from our community, and they don't listen to God, and they do that. But they move on, right? Now, they're part of our legacy. They're part of our church, but they move to a different community. The other way they move on is from this life. I've been a pastor long enough now in this church. We've actually had funerals for people who are part of our church launch. That's happening. That's part of that, right? They move on. Or maybe they moved on from our church. Maybe they said, listen, this isn't my church anymore. I'm going to leave. That happens. We call those legacy. That's a legacy, somebody who's moved on. The second group of people we talk about is called unknown. Unknown simply means we just haven't seen or heard from them for a long time. I reach out to people, but I don't always hear back from them. Sometimes, and I mean this jokingly, some people have a state-sponsored vacation. You know what I'm talking about? They don't always call me up and say, hey, Pastor, I'm doing 3 to 5. See you in a little while, right? Okay, that happens. We just don't know. But sometimes they come back. So how I say unknown people, we don't count unknown people, but we don't count them out. Because sometimes people come back, right? So what does it mean? Legacy, unknown. Then the third group of people we have, what we call our current crowd. And these are the people who are here, verbally, physically, that type of thing. I'm going to go back to unknown for just a second. Okay? Don't be unknown. If something happens or you leave or you move, let me know. Because we want to know about that. We want to pray for that. Reach out to that, right? So current crowd, right now, just so you know, here in Yankton, we have about 55 people. That's our current crowd. That's how many people are our current crowd. Our campground that we do at 9 o'clock, we have about 40 people. So altogether, there's about 95 people that are part of Celebrate. That doesn't count any of our legacy. That doesn't count any of our unknown. It doesn't count any of the 60,000 people that live 30 miles from our front door. This is a huge thing for us as a church to do. And I want you to know, if you're part of that current crowd group, I pray for you every day by name. Why? Because people matter. I pray for you, I pray for your family, because I believe that part of it. That's where we're at. So that's what we talk about. We talk about people. People and community matters. The second thing I want to share with you about is money. Everybody gets up and leave. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Now, when it comes to money, the number one thing you're going to fight about in your marriage, in a business, or in your family is money. And so I want you to know a couple things about our money here. The first thing is that our tithes and offerings. We call about tithes and offerings. Everything that is a tithe and offering is documented and is tracked. If you have a curiosity what that means, ask about that. Also, all of our operating expenses, so all of our bills we have to pay every month, our building fund, all of that's documented. If you would want to know what those numbers are, ask me about that and see it. One of the things I'll say about money and when it comes to churches, there's a lot of things that I don't do right. There's a lot of things that I've struggled with. But one thing, I've never allowed anyone to bully me with money when it comes to a church. And it happens sometimes. And when anybody tries to bully me with money, the first thing I feel 2 things. The first thing is I feel sorry for them because they just told me who their God was. There's a God, and it's not the one in heaven. It's the one in their pocketbook. But the second thing is this means you're putting your faith in something that's not going to last. So that's not going to be an issue for us. But what numbers do, numbers give us the reality, but faith shows us what reality could be. And that's where we're going with that. So again, if you have questions about that, ask. We want to share what that is with you so you can know. The other thing that we want to talk about too is really kind of give you something, some vision of what we're doing and how we're going. And I know I try really hard. I work really hard at communication. So I want to clarify things, and I don't always do a good job at that. Couple examples of that. The first one is when it comes to like our construction. I'll give you an example. We talked about the women's bathroom door that we're going to move out. And I used to say it this way. I used to say, we're going to move the women's bathroom door and we're going to move it out. And it's kind of confusing. Why are we doing that? I stopped saying that. Now you know what I start saying? We're going to expand the women's bathroom. That makes sense, right? Instead of just moving a door, we're expanding the women's bathroom. Here's the second thing. We talk about Janet's kids. We said how we're going to do just a birth through 2, and we're just going to do 10 kids or less. Well, that's confusing. Like, there's all these numbers. What does that mean? What we're doing is we're doing an infant-only child care center. That's simple, right? That makes simple. So one of the things that we talked about last year, and I shared this as a group, we talked about our Yankton 100. Okay, and if that's a new term to you, you probably heard it last year. It's called our Yankton 100. And what I shared was, listen, if we have 100 people who are committed to what we're doing, this is what we'd like to have. What happened is some people took that as $100 a month was like more than they could afford. Like, I don't have that kind of money, Pastor. I can't do $100 a month. That's not what we're talking about. The Yankton 100 is we're committed to what God's saying. And some can do more, some can do less, but the point is to be committed to that. And that's what we're talking about. So by September 30th, one of the things that I love to do, build community. That's what we want to do. We want to share, we want to serve, we want to solve. I don't want to invite you. I want to invite you to come and be part of this and be part of what God's doing. And understanding what God's doing is so important to us, and recognizing that. This is what God's doing and how we can live our life for what he's doing as well. I really believe with all my heart that God's doing a really good thing here in Yankton right now. And I want you guys to be part of what we're doing and seeing that as well. And if you have questions, ask the questions and see that. But what I want to leave you with today is talk about how if we were to go back in time 20 years and talk about Netflix, and I try to explain Netflix to you, right? And you're like, wait a minute, I could sit on my couch, I could push a button, and I could watch any movie that's ever existed in human history. You'd be like, your mind would be blown, right? I don't have to take a DVD, I don't have to take it back to the store, it's just all right here. Why do I say that? God's on the move. And church, the way that we used to do church, the way that we've done church for how long in this country is changing. And the idea of just having a big building that sits empty 6 days a week and is only used on Sunday, I think 10 years from now is going to be Blockbuster Video. We're going to say, oh, we used to do it that way. And here's what I mean. I think that right now, the message of Jesus Christ has never changed. It's been the same for thousands of years, and it will never change. But our methods have to change. I know it's different to talk about, hey, we're doing daycare, we're doing party plaza, we're doing laser tag. What does that mean? All of that's church. All of that's community. All of that's our way of reaching people, sharing it with love people, serving. It's going to take people to serve. That's what I talk about when it comes to that Yankton 100. By September 30th, I'd love to have at least 50 people say, yes, I want to be part of this. I want to see that and believe that God can do what he can do. Let's go to prayer. God, I'm so grateful for all that you're doing here, and I'm so grateful for what you've called us to do here in Yankton. And God, I know that you're leading this charge, and we're so incredibly thankful for all that you're doing. And God, right now, I just pray for each person here that we would be just as excited about what you're doing in our lives, and that we would share that with all the people around us, in our jobs, in our homes, in our families. God, that we would take this opportunity to say yes and to serve. God, that might mean helping out on Sundays. It might be in other ways, but there's so many ways that all of us can get together and that can serve. And God, I know that sometimes there's problems that'll come up. It's going to come up, Lord. But when those problems come up, God, that we would solve for unity. That we would love each other well. And we wouldn't give up, Lord. We would talk. We would press in. We would have those conversations, God. And God, I just pray if anybody says yes, and they said, yes, I want to be part of that Yankton 100. I want to be committed to what we're doing here, God. That they would take the time to have a conversation with me. And that we would say yes and walk through what that means for each person. Again, we're all members of one body, God. It doesn't mean we all have to look the same and sound the same. What it means is we all need to be going in the same direction and be pointed towards you and what you have for us in our lives and our world. We thank you so much and ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.